You're standing in line at the supermarket. You pull out your card, tap it against the reader, it beeps, and you walk out with food that someone on the other side of the planet grew, packaged, and shipped. That entire chain, all that exchange, resolved in a 3-second gesture. And as you walk to your car, you don't think about how strange that is, because to you, money feels as natural as air. But for 97% of human history, money didn't exist. There were no coins, no bills, no prices, no wages, no bank accounts. And yet humans still ate, built houses, raised children, exchanged objects across entire continents, and lived complete lives. So, how did they do it? How did you get a new knife if you couldn't buy it? How did you pay someone who helped you? How did you measure the value of anything? The answer is going to change the way you understand not just the past, but the system you're living in right now. Let's start with the biggest myth they probably taught you in school. You were told that before money, humans used barter, that if you had a cow and wanted shoes, you found a shoemaker who wanted a cow and you made the trade. It's a clean story, logical, and almost completely false. In 2011, anthropologist David Graeber published the book that shook modern economics. After reviewing 5,000 years of anthropological evidence from societies on every continent, he reached an uncomfortable conclusion. Pure barter economies, where people exchange objects directly without money, basically don't exist in any documented society. They never existed as a primary system. The idea of barter comes from Adam Smith in 1776, who imagined it as a logical hypothesis, not as a historical fact. And since then, generations of economists have repeated it as if it were true. So, what did they actually do? The answer is something your modern brain has trouble processing. They lived in economies of gifts and mutual debt. Imagine this: someone in your group has a new knife. You need it. You walk over and ask for it. He gives it to you. He doesn't ask for anything in return. You don't sign anything. There's no price. Quite simply, now he has an invisible credit with you, and everyone in the group knows it. At some point, weeks or years later, he's going to need something: meat, help building something, care when he's sick, and you'll be there because that's how the world works. This isn't a romantic theory. Anthropologists have documented it in hundreds of societies. The Iroquois in North America stored their food in communal granaries and distributed it according to need. The peoples of the Pacific practiced the Kula system, where ceremonial necklaces and bracelets traveled between islands for years, crossing thousands of kilometers, simply as gestures of relationship. In Polynesia, giving was a form of power. Leaders weren't the ones who accumulated the most, but the ones who gave the most. In 1925, French sociologist Marcel Mauss published an essay called The Gift, where he demonstrated something fundamental. In these societies, refusing a gift was a declaration of war. Accepting a gift and not eventually returning something of equivalent value was a social disgrace. The gift wasn't free. It was the entire economic system, sustained not by contracts but by memory, reputation, and mutual obligation. But here comes the part that really breaks your head. If there was no money, how was debt handled? Because debt did exist. It existed from the beginning. In fact, Graeber argues something even more radical. Debt was not born from money. Money was born from debt. The first written clay tablets in Mesopotamia 5,000 years ago aren't poetry, aren't laws, aren't stories. They are records of debts. So many kilos of barley that this person owes to that temple. So many sheep that this family owes to that one. Sumerian temples functioned as central banks before the word bank even existed. They kept accounts, recorded favors, and when debts piled up too much, kings would decree something called a jubilee. They erased all debts. They started from zero because they understood something we have forgotten. A society where too many people owe too much falls apart. Money as a physical object, metal coins, only appeared about 2,600 years ago in Lydia, in what is now Turkey. And it didn't appear to make purchases at the market. It appeared to pay soldiers. Kings needed a portable way to keep armies far from home. A gold coin weighed little, couldn't easily be faked, and was accepted anywhere the king held power. The market came later, almost as a side effect. People started using coins among themselves because they were already in circulation. So think about this for a moment. Money, that thing that defines your entire life, that decides where you live, what you eat, who you spend time with, isn't a natural invention of human commerce. It's a military tool that escaped the hands of kings and became the operating system of the entire world. Now, let's reconstruct what life felt like without it. You wake up in a village of 500 people. You know all of them. You know who is good at hunting, who is good at weaving, who tells the best stories, who is sick, who is pregnant. No one has a salary. No one has a checking account. And yet, no one goes hungry because when one person gets food, everyone eats. If your house falls down, you don't call a contractor. The whole village shows up the next day and raises it with you in an afternoon. You'll do the same when someone else needs it. There are no prices, but there is value. A good axe is worth the respect of the blacksmith who made it. A well-told story is worth the nights around the fire. A woman who knows how to deliver babies is worth the care of the entire community when she grows old. Value exists, but it isn't measured in numbers. It's measured in relationships. And here is the most disturbing detail. In those societies, you couldn't be poor, not in the way you understand poverty. You could have bad luck, you could be sick, you could be old and weak, but you couldn't be separated from food, from shelter, from care, because that would require active act of exclusion by your group. And excluding someone without reason was the greatest social sin possible. Poverty, as you know it, that feeling of seeing food behind the glass and not being able to touch it, that poverty needed money in order to exist. Something changed about 5,000 years ago. Cities grew, groups became so large that you can no longer know everyone. Collective memory stopped working as an accounting system. You needed records, you needed symbols, you needed something that could travel between strangers and still represent value. And so, writing was born, along with formal debt, along with interest, along with the idea that the time of a human being could be bought by the hour. By the 4th century before Christ, in Greece, Aristotle was already warning about the danger of money that grows on its own, what he called interest. He said it was unnatural because money does not reproduce like an animal or a seed. But the system was already in motion, and since then, for more than 2,000 years, humans have lived inside a structure where the value of everything, including your time, your body, your ideas, gets translated into an abstract figure. Today, you open an app on your phone and you see a number. That number decides whether you eat what you want this week, whether you can see your family this year, whether you can rest when you're tired. Your ancestors lived for 300,000 years without that number. They didn't live without effort, they didn't live without pain, they didn't live without conflict, but they lived without that specific anxiety that lights up every time you open your bank account. You trust people, they trust a system. They knew that if they went hungry, someone would share. You know that if you lose your job, you could end up on the street despite being surrounded by food. They invested in relationships because relationships were their life insurance. You invest in a retirement you might never reach. They gave gifts because giving was power. You buy things because having is status. I'm not saying their world was perfect. They had violence, they had famine, they had disease, but they understood a truth that money makes you forget every single day. Humans were not designed to survive alone. We were designed to need each other. And every coin, every bill, every silent transfer that replaces a favor between neighbors takes us one step further from the only system that truly worked for 97% of our existence. The next time you pay for something, think for a second. You're not exchanging value for value. You're using a tool that a king of Lydia invented to keep his soldiers loyal. And somehow, that tool ended up owning your entire life.